Now, everybody's heard about the men in black, but what about the woman? Colin Perks had an overriding obsession with finding the final resting place of the legendary King Arthur, which he had came to believe was somewhere in the vicinity of an old abbey in the ancient English town of Glastonbury. It was in the latter part of the year 2000 when Colin's investigations of King Arthur was at its most intense. Colin then received an odd yet carefully worded telephone call from a woman who said she wished to meet with him to speak about his Arthurian studies. Perks found this highly unsettling as he had no real family to speak of, and very few of his work colleagues and friends had any significant knowledge of his passion for the tales and mythology surrounding the ancient King Arthur. The fact that this mysterious caller didn't know of Colin's activities is what actually prompted him to agree to meet with her at his home that was just not too far outside of Glastonbury itself. It was 7 p.m. when he received a loud knock on his front door. Upon opening the door, Colin found himself face to face with what he described as the most beautiful woman he had ever seen in his entire life. She stood about 6 feet tall, about 40 years old, with a head full of black, beautiful hair and milk-colored skin, wearing a chic, expensive-looking black suit. She identified herself as Miss Sarah Key. She stood there in brief silence, awaiting Colin's permission to enter his home. Colin threw away all caution and did choose to invite her into his home and motioned for her to follow him into the living room. As the two sat down, the conversation began with Sarah stating that her and several of her colleagues had been following Colin's research closely over the last few years. Colin retorted that what she said was rubbish because he had never published anything nor spoken about what he does as a hobby to virtually anybody. He told her that if she knew anything about him, she would know that he keeps to himself and that's the way that he likes it. Of which she replied that regardless of all of that, she still knows all about him. She began rattling off detail after detail about Colin's quest to find the remains of King Arthur and how she was there to express the concerns of a select group of people within the British ruling elite who had a particular interest in certain facets of Colin's dedicated studies. What she told him next was groundbreaking, that the resting place of King Arthur was the gateway to a harsh realm populated by nightmarish creatures that would likely provoke catastrophe if allowed entry into our world, and that prying open Arthur's tomb would ensure the opening of that dreaded door. Hence, it being very vital that Colin immediately stop his investigation, as he could be directly responsible for disaster in not just Britain, but to the entire planet. Then, she leaned in closer, telling him that he cannot possibly begin to understand the enormity of what stands before him, and its importance is why she was visiting him and not somebody else. But if he did not drop the matter, somebody would come calling that he would not want to, and who would not be so nice. It was then that Sarah stood up and headed for the door, her last words to him being, "That's about it, Mr. Perks. You have done well, but do not go snooping anymore. What you are on the verge of uncovering is the gateway to another world, and you do not want to know what is there. Believe me, and we do not want you to open that gateway. Go out and enjoy yourself and put all this behind you. If you persist, you will receive another visitor, and things will then be out of our control." And with that, Miss Sarah left. The thing was, though, Colin was very, very passionate about finding King Arthur's tomb, and he had been for many, many years by then. He felt that he was way too close to the truth to just stop now, despite what the woman in black had warned him. And so Colin chose to continue his quest. But then he did receive another visitor, one that was far different from the alluring and beautiful, mysterious Miss Sarah Key. It was around 9 p.m. on Saturday, November 2000, and Colin Perks was driving home from the city of Bath along a very long stretch of tree-shrouded road. Oddly, given that this was a weekend evening on the fringes of a bustling city, Colin said that he saw absolutely no other cars on the road, but he did see something. Suddenly, Colin was approached by what looked like a large man standing in the middle of the road, stranding the center white line as Colin slowed his vehicle to a snail's pace. To Colin's terror, he could see that the so-called man was actually nothing of the sort. It had pale skin, scrawny arms and legs, and connected to its upper torso was a huge pair of leather-like wings. In other words, this was a Batman. As the headlights of Colin's vehicle bathed the Batman in a cascade of light, Colin could see his bones through its hollow legs. But most terrifying of all was the head of this monster. It was hairless, with two pointed ears, with fiery eyes that seemingly burned into Colin's soul. It had a malevolent sneer and a hooked nose, with a pair of large, lethal-looking, raging fangs hanging from his mouth. Colin was not any fool, though. He floored the accelerator and headed right for the winged beast. But like a chain-rattling spook from some 19th century Gothic novel, the Batman vanished in an instant. Colin made his way home to the safety of his bed, and the following week was normal. But during the early hours of November 14, 2000, he was violently jolted from his slumber by the sight of the devilish winged beast again. This time, it was looming right over his body, and then suddenly lunged at him, grabbing his waist, and told him how he was warned that he would come if he did not stop his investigation. It was then that Colin realized that this was the follow-up visit that Sarah had warned him of. As Colin stared up at the beast in pure terror, the Batman telepathically communicated a message into his mind, reiterating the words of Miss Sarah Key, telling Colin to stay away from all things Arthurian. And with that, the winged man was gone. And for a while, so was Colin's research. Colin later would go on to believe that Miss Sarah Key and the winged creature were the same entity, and that she was a shapeshifter who presented herself in a more digestible manner to bear him a warning. But when he had ceased to listen to her, she reappeared in her true form and dropped her feminine charm. Like stated, Colin did temporarily halt his research after the encounter with the Batman, but eventually did pick back up where he left off, until his life was tragically cut short by a massive heart attack on England's Salisbury Plain in early 2009. I suppose this attests to the bark really coming before the bite, and curiosity really killing the cat. For more discussions of conspiracy theories or odd and unusual things that happen on this planet or in outer space or anywhere, please like, comment, and subscribe. I will not let you down. Also, what are some conspiracy theories you would like for me to talk about? Because I've heard a lot, but obviously I haven't heard them all. Please comment down below and let me know.